What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video today, we're going to learn about GPT function calling, which is an absolute game changer when it comes to working with the language models from OpenAI. So let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to learn about GPT function calling in this video today. And this is going to be absolutely mind-blowing for those of you who have not heard about this yet. GPT function calling essentially allows us to use the large language models, the GPT models from OpenAI, to call our own functions in an intelligent way. And why is this important? Why is this impressive? Because, of course, the GPT models don't have access to current data. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have any access to real-time data. They are trained up until September 2021. So everything after that is basically invisible to the GPT models. So if you want to know something about the current weather, about the stock price of a company, the latest stock price of a company, if you want to know something about current events, GPT cannot answer that question. However, your functions can. So you can query the Yahoo Finance API. You can query a weather API. You can do something that gets some current data from the internet. And what you can do now with GPT function calling is you can use the large language models to call functions that you define based on a user prompt to then take the output of that function and give an intelligent response. So this would be, for example, me asking GPT, what is the stock price of Microsoft right now? And then GPT would go call my function, it would get the current stock price, and the response would then be, the latest stock price of Microsoft is this. So it would take my prompt, turn it into a function call the function, get the result, take the result, and turn it into an answer. That is the power of function calling. And we're going to go right into the code here. But first of all, we need to make sure that we have everything set up properly. So what you need to have is you need to have the OpenAI package installed. So you're going to need to install OpenAI using pip. Then, of course, you're going to need an OpenAI account or something, or you need to have an API key that allows you to access some OpenAI account. And once you have your OpenAI account, you can just log in. You can go to View API Keys, and you can create a new secret key, or you can use one that you already created in the past. And the important thing here, of course, is requests to the API cost credits. So you will need to have some credits. You will need to have some money. However, if you create a new account, you're going to get, I think, at least it was like that for some time, you will get $5 of free credits that you can use. And also, I think all the requests we're going to do in this video today are going to be below 1 cent or maybe 1 or 2 cents. It's not going to be a lot, so you don't need to spend $10 to follow along with the video here. So what you want to do is you want to create an API key, you want to store it into a file, and then we can get started by saying import OpenAI, import JSON. This is core Python now. Let me just zoom in a little bit here. And in my directory here, I have the key.txt file, which is containing my OpenAI API key. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say OpenAI.API_key equals, and then open key.txt reading mode.read, like this. This will now get my API key and load the API key into OpenAI so that I can actually send requests that will spend my money, essentially. So that is the setup. Now, to see how it works immediately, to not have to code too much before we get any impressive results, we can just go to the documentation here for the GPT models, and we can scroll down, I think, here to function calling, and we can copy the example. So we can go and copy this code here. This is the example here. And what this example does is it creates a sample function here, a dummy function, get current weather, and all this function does is it returns a dictionary here, a JSON object, essentially. So this is no actual weather API that we're calling here. Later on in the video, I will show you an actual example with stock prices, but this now is just a dummy function, so it's just going to return some weather information with a location. It's just going to take the parameter, put it into the dictionary here, and that's it. And it will also take the unit and display it here. That's all we're going to do with that function. So again, this is just a dummy function, nothing too impressive. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have this function here where all the magic is going to happen. I'm going to copy it here, and I'm going to explain to you what is happening here. You can also copy it yourself from this documentation here, but I think it makes more sense to show it like that than to code it from scratch here, because you will get, first of all, faster results, and then we can also talk a little bit more about what is actually happening and not focus too much on just coding down what is already part of the documentation. So the basic idea that we have here is we have a function run conversation. It doesn't have to be a function. You can also just write the code directly. But essentially what we do here is we have some messages. And the messages here are the message history. So this is nothing new. This is just the ordinary OpenAI chat completion structure. We have a role, user, I think the other one was assistant or chatbot or something, and one was system. And here we just have the user asking a question. What's the weather like in Boston? And of course you can change this to whatever you like, but we're now going to use this example here. What's the weather like in Boston? And then the important thing here is the functions list here. So what we do here is we define a list. In this list we have a dictionary, and in this dictionary we have some key value pairs. Essentially we have the name of the function. In our case it's get current weather. And we describe to ChatGPT or to the GPT model what this function looks like, what it does, and what the parameters are. So all of this is text. None of this is actually a reference to a function. None of this is actually referencing anything. This is just text. So we're just saying to GPT, look, there is a function. It has this name. This is what it does. We have those parameters. Those are mandatory. This is the description for the individual parameters. Know that, and when the user asks something, think about whether this function could help you with the solution or not, and then call it or don't call it. So that's the basic thing. We just provide it with the information that such a function exists. So we say the function is get current weather. What does this function do? Here you can just use plain text to describe what the function does. Get the current weather in a given location. And of course, if you have a complex function, it makes sense to specify exactly what the function does so that ChatGPT knows, or that GPT knows, when to call that function and when not to call that function. And then we have the parameters key here, which points to a dictionary. And here we have basically just type object, and then the properties. Here we have the parameters, location and unit. Location is a string, and what does this string contain? The city and state, for example, San Francisco, CA. And then we have the unit. It's of type string, but it's also an enumeration. It can be Celsius or Fahrenheit. And then the required argument here is location. So all of this, I mentioned it for the third time, I think, all of this is just text. There's nothing else but text here. No reference, no functionality, no code. ChatGPT does not know what this function actually looks like. We have it here, but it doesn't know that. It only knows that some function exists that does this with those parameters here. And then what we do is we ask the OpenAI API that we want to do a chat completion. We say that the model is just GPT 3.5 because GPT-4 is now limited. You have to sign up for a waiting list. I'm not part of that team that can use the GPT-4 API yet. So I use GPT 3.5. So you specify the model, you specify the messages. This is just ordinary chat completion. But the new thing that you do now is you define the functions. So you pass the functions to this chat completion, and you set function call to auto. So this basically just tells you that, or this basically just says, okay, if you decide that a function should be called, this is the functions, or those are the functions that you have, call the function, and then as a response here, we get a message. And what we can do here is we can check if this response message contains a function call. So if we get from this response message function call, then basically ChatGPT has decided to call a function. Now, this doesn't have to be the case. If the model doesn't perform well, or if the model does perform very well and recognizes that it actually doesn't have to call a function. So for example, if you ask something like, is Boston a sunny city in general? This is not something that should call this function. So in this case, it shouldn't call the function. In this case here, what's the weather like in Boston? It should call the function. So if it calls the function, we're going to get into this section here. And all we do here is basically we just map the function string to the actual function. So this is now Python code. We're now no longer in the OpenAI world, we're now in Python again, we get a response. It tells us, okay, it wants to call a function. Now, the functions that we know are getCurrentWeather. The string is mapped to a function. The string doesn't have to be the same, by the way. So I can also specify a different function name here and point to the same function. So I can also call this weather function pointing to the actual getCurrentWeather function here. So then we get the function name. We translate the function name to an actual function. We call this function with the arguments that we get from this function call here. And then what we do is we basically just call the function, and we get the response from the function call. In our case, this is going to be this JSON object here, but it could be anything. It could be some string, it could be a number, whatever. And what we do then is we take that, we append the message here to the messages that we already have up here. We append now the response message, and we basically feed the output into the ChatGPT model again to then format it. So why do we do that? We could also just stop and just print the results, but we want to have an answer from the chatbot. So we don't want to just get a JSON object. We want to take that JSON object, feed it into ChatGPT one more time to get a response that is actually in readable text form. So something like the weather in Boston is like this right now. So that is that. I'm going to run this now, so that you can see that this actually works. And I think this will return a JSON object here with a response. So if you want to get just a response, you just have to go for content. And what you can see here is now the current weather in Boston is 72 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny, but it's also windy. And this is just because, of course, we have here the static response. So this is not actually a weather API that we're querying here, but we're going to change that now. So this is the example from the documentation. We're now going to implement our own example, which is going to query the stock market, the Yahoo Finance API, and it's going to give us the live information about stock prices. So what we're going to do first is we're going to install a module called yfinance. So pip3 install yfinance, in my case already installed. And we're going to then say import yfinance as yf. And then what we want to do here is we want to define a function, get stock price, for a ticker symbol. So we're not going to pass a company name. Obviously, we're going to pass a ticker symbol. So instead of passing Microsoft, we would pass MSFT. Instead of passing Apple, AAPL. Instead of passing NVIDIA, NVDA. So you would, of course, have to know these ticker symbols. And we're not going to provide ChatGPT with the ticker symbols. We're going to expect it to already know them, which of course can be a problem, because if a company changes its name like Facebook to Meta and it happened after September 2021, this could actually be a problem for ChatGPT. But we're going to ignore this now. We're going to just return a string. The string is going to be Yahoo Finance ticker history period equals 1 month. Doesn't actually matter too much. And then we're going to say ilog -1. So the last entry essentially. And this is a string now. So this is our function. It's a very simple function. It queries the Yahoo Finance API. So all I can do here is I can pass a ticker symbol, MSFT, and I would get a stock price. Or actually, I think, should I maybe get the close price? Yeah, maybe I should get the close price of that. There you go. So I get just a floating point number that gives me the current stock price of Microsoft. Nothing too fancy, nothing too complicated. Now, what I want to do here is I want to do the same thing that we did up here with a weather function, but I want to do it with my stock function. So I can just copy this here from the documentation, the code, and I can change it a little bit. So I can say now, okay, first of all, the conversation is going to get a parameter. So I'm going to call this run conversation 2, user message, and I'm going to just have a parameter in here. So user message is what we're going to ask. The function we want to describe is the get stock price function. Get the current stock price for a given ticker symbol. It's important to mention that we're asking for a ticker symbol and not for a company name. Now, ChatGPT might be intelligent enough to realize this on its own, so we don't have to necessarily say that probably. If we know that we're asking for a stock price, it will probably use this ticker symbol right away, but still it makes sense to be explicit here. So of a company, and then we're going to say parameters. We have the properties ticker. Ticker is going to be a string, and the description of that is going to be the ticker or the stock ticker symbol for the company, for a company, and then we can say example AAPL for Apple. So it's good to provide an example here. We're going to get rid of the second parameter here. We don't need it. And we're going to say required is only the ticker, or only, I mean, ticker is going to be required. So this is now our function definition. We have a function get stock price, gets the current stock price, given a ticker symbol. The parameter ticker is the stock ticker symbol for a company, for example, AAPL for Apple. It's required. And then we basically just feed this into the chat completion API. We get a response. This all stays the same. Now, let me just get rid of the comments here to keep this a little bit more concise. And now we're going to say, okay, if we get stock price, then we're going to map this to get stock price. And then we're going to have function name, function call. This is very generalized here, so we don't really need to change much here. But here we need to change, of course, the ticker to function arguments get ticker. And that is basically it. Then we get the response and we feed it back into ChatGPT to get an output. So that is already all of the magic. This is what we had to change here. So again, we just changed the name of the function, we changed the description, the parameters. Of course, we also had the user message here now, which is a parameter. We asked ChatGPT to process the user prompt to get a response. Then we call the function if necessary, and then we feed the result of the function back into ChatGPT to give us a response. And of course, here we're now going to call run conversation 2, and I'm going to ask for a simple query. We're going to start simple. I'm going to say, give me the current stock price of Microsoft. And that is basically what we want here. I'm running this already. And what I get here is the current stock price of Microsoft MSFT is $334.97. Now, I think we should also be able to see the actual response message here. So I can actually print the response message because that's maybe interesting. I'm going to run this again. What we get here is you can see that the function that ChatGPT decides to call the function get stock price with the ticker MSFT. It recognizes that Microsoft has the ticker symbol MSFT and that given my prompt, it should call this function to get the stock price of MSFT, and then it knows that the current stock price is what we get here. Now, I can make this even more difficult for ChatGPT, and at least when I tested it, it worked. Let's see if it still works. Give me the current stock price of the company founded by Bill Gates. So I'm not even mentioning Microsoft here. I'm running this, and you can see, hopefully, there you go, ticker MSFT. This actually even works for not so obvious examples. So give me the latest stock price of the leading GPU company, and this should hopefully give me NVIDIA. There you go. NVIDIA is being asked here. The latest stock price of the leading GPU company, NVIDIA Corporation, is, and so on. Please note that the stock prices are constantly changing and may vary at the time you check. And you can see the power of this. You can already see why this is mind-blowing. I have a function that has access to the internet. I just have to give this interface to ChatGPT, and it can use it however it likes. It can decide, okay, to answer this question, I don't have this information, but this function that I know of can give me that information, and then I can answer the question with the help of that function. And you can just give it, I don't know, 100 different functions that do 100 different things, and then ChatGPT all of a sudden has access to real-time information from the internet. This is mind-blowing. This is a game changer. You can do so many different things with that, and I think you will see a lot of different examples on how this can be used on my channel here in future videos. But I don't know, this just blows my mind. You can just use this intelligent large language model, and it now has access to real-time data from the internet. And also, in addition to that, not just necessarily to the internet, it can also have access to your private sources. So it doesn't have to query the Yahoo Finance API. It can query your own CSV files, your own databases, your own local files that are maybe not even part of the internet. This is crazy. So let's maybe just play around with it a little bit longer. Let's see what we can, if we can go to a limit. One thing that I wanted to see here is what happens if, I didn't test this yet, what happens if I just ask something that cannot be answered with a function. So for example, what are stocks? Maybe this should not result in a function call, ideally. And I think it doesn't, right? Yeah, there you go. We get just a description of what stocks are. We don't get a function call. But I can say, for example, now, actually, I don't know if this is possible. This would be very interesting. I think this is not possible, but I'm going to try it. Is the stock price of Apple higher than that of Microsoft? Now, I don't think that this works, right? Because it would have to call the function twice. No, because now it just gives me, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I would have to do some stuff, some additional stuff around this to make it, to give it a possibility to run two functions, or to run the same function twice with different parameters. But it would be possible. It just doesn't work out of the box. But maybe one last example. Let's try to, actually, I think this should be even able to get crypto prices. So give me the current price of Ethereum. Let's see if that works, because that is not a stock. And my function doesn't say that it can handle crypto. So I think the API can. Okay, no, it cannot. I think it's just a different ticker, right? Okay, for Bitcoin, it seems to work. But BTC is maybe a company, right? Not sure. I mean, maybe if I add, keep in mind that the Yahoo Finance tickers for BTC and ETH are not just BTC and ETH. Maybe this will help. No, it doesn't even seem to call my function now. So maybe that's too much. I don't know. But it works very well if I say that I'm actually looking for a company and then I'm actually looking for a company. Or now maybe it crashes. I don't know what it does. It doesn't seem like it can answer the question. Looks like it's stuck. But yeah, nevertheless, you can see that this is very impressive if you use it the way it should be used. Now, what do we get here? We get a timeout, service overloaded. We're not ready yet. Maybe let me run this a second time. There you go. Oh, there you go. It actually works. When I give it the information that in Yahoo Finance, actually the tickers are not just that simple, it realizes, okay, the actual ticker is BTC-USD, and it then gives me the current Bitcoin price. This is mind-blowing again. Okay, very nice. This is how you do function calling with OpenAI and GPT and Python. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video and bye.